Have you ever heard a story so powerful it has been told and retold for thousands of years? A story of power, oppression, faith, and liberation? Today, we're diving deep into one of the most epic tales in history, the story of Moses and the Pharaoh of Egypt. This isn't just a religious tale. It's a profound human drama that echoes through the ages, found in both the Torah and the Quran. It's a story about a tyrant who thought he was a god, and a humble prophet chosen to challenge him. Our story begins in ancient Egypt, a land of majestic pyramids and the mighty Nile River. But beneath this grandeur, a great injustice was taking place. The Israelites, who had settled in Egypt generations before, were now enslaved. The ruling Pharaoh, fearing their growing numbers, imposed brutal forced labor upon them. His cruelty didn't stop there. In a horrific decree, he ordered that every newborn Hebrew boy be killed. It was a dark and terrifying time, filled with despair. But even in the deepest darkness, a flicker of hope can ignite. In the midst of this persecution, a baby boy was born to an Israelite woman. His name was Moses. His mother, desperate to save him from Pharaoh's decree, hid him for as long as she could. But when she could hide him no longer, she devised a daring plan. She placed her infant son in a waterproof basket and set him adrift on the currents of the Nile River, entrusting his fate to God. It was an act of incredible faith and heart-wrenching love. Imagine this tiny, helpless baby floating down the great river, his life hanging by a thread. By a twist of fate, or perhaps by divine design, the basket floated right to the spot where Pharaoh's own wife was bathing. She saw the basket and heard the baby's cries. Her heart was moved with compassion. Ignoring the fact that he was a Hebrew child, one of the very people her husband sought to control and diminish, she decided to adopt him. And so, in the most unbelievable turn of events, the boy who was meant to be destroyed was brought into the very palace of the man who ordered his death. Moses grew up as a prince of Egypt. He was raised in the lap of luxury, educated in the ways of the court, and enjoyed all the privileges of royalty. He learned the skills of a warrior and the knowledge of a scholar, completely unaware of his true heritage. He walked the halls of power, rubbing shoulders with the very family that was oppressing his people. For all intents and purposes, he was Egyptian royalty. But his destiny had other plans. A deep sense of justice burned within him, a fire that would soon change the course of his life and the history of his people. One day, as a young man, Moses witnessed something that shattered his world. He saw an Egyptian taskmaster brutally beating one of the Hebrew slaves. In a flash of righteous anger, Moses intervened. He struck the Egyptian, killing him. The act, born from a desire to protect the weak, instantly made him a fugitive. Overcome with fear and realizing his life was now in danger, Moses had no choice but to flee. He left behind the palace, the power, and the only life he had ever known, and escaped into the vast empty desert, heading towards a land called Midian. In Midian, Moses transformed from a prince into a shepherd. He found refuge, married, and started a family. For years he lived a simple, quiet life, perhaps thinking his past in Egypt was far behind him. But God had not forgotten him. One day, while tending his flock on a mountain, Moses saw a strange sight, a bush that was engulfed in flames but was not burning up. As he approached this miraculous sight, he heard a voice calling his name from the fire. It was the voice of God. He was given a monumental, terrifying task: to return to Egypt, confront the mighty Pharaoh, and demand the release of the Israelites. Can you imagine the fear and doubt Moses must have felt? He was a fugitive, a simple shepherd, now being asked to challenge the most powerful man on earth. To help him, God granted Moses the ability to perform miracles. Armed with a staff and his brother Aaron as his spokesman, Moses returned to the land of his birth. He stood before Pharaoh, the man who was likely his childhood companion, and delivered God's message: "Let my people go." Pharaoh, who considered himself a living god, laughed at this demand. He was arrogant and his heart was hardened. He refused, and to show his disdain, he made the Israelites work even harder. This refusal set the stage for a divine showdown. To demonstrate his power and break Pharaoh's stubborn will, God sent a series of 10 devastating plagues upon Egypt. Each plague was more terrifying than the last, a direct challenge to the various gods of the Egyptian pantheon. First, the Nile River, the lifeblood of Egypt, turned to blood. The water was undrinkable, and the fish died. Yet Pharaoh refused to relent. Then came the second plague, a massive infestation of frogs. They swarmed out of the river, covering the land and filling people's homes. They were in their beds, in their ovens, everywhere. Pharaoh begged Moses to stop the plague, promising to let the people go, but as soon as the frogs vanished, he went back on his word. His heart remained hard. The plagues continued to escalate. The third plague brought swarms of lice or gnats that tormented both people and animals. This was followed by the fourth plague, thick swarms of flies that descended upon the homes of the Egyptians, while mysteriously sparing the areas where the Israelites lived. Despite the clear divine signature on these events, Pharaoh's pride would not let him yield. The fifth plague struck the Egyptians' most valuable assets, their livestock. A terrible pestilence killed their horses, donkeys, camels, cattle, and sheep. Yet, the Israelites' animals remained untouched. Still, Pharaoh would not listen. So, the sixth plague came in the form of painful boils that broke out on the skin of all Egyptians, from the lowest servant to the highest court magician. The suffering was immense, but Pharaoh's heart grew even harder. Next, a terrifying hailstorm, unlike anything Egypt had ever seen, rained down from the sky. The hail was mixed with fire, destroying crops, trees, and anyone or anything left out in the open. It was a storm of supernatural fury. Pharaoh, in a moment of panic, admitted his sin and promised to free the slaves. But as soon as the storm ceased, his arrogance returned. The eighth plague brought an unimaginable swarm of locusts. They swept in and devoured every green thing the hail had left behind. The land of Egypt, once lush and fertile, was left barren and desolate. This was followed by the ninth plague, a profound and terrifying darkness. For 3 days, a thick, palpable darkness covered Egypt, so intense that people could not see each other or even move from their places. Yet, in the homes of the Israelites, there was light. Even this chilling display of power was not enough to break Pharaoh. This brought them to the 10th and final plague, the most tragic of all. God warned that the firstborn son in every Egyptian household would die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh himself to the firstborn of the lowest servant, and even the firstborn of the livestock. The Israelites were instructed to mark their doorposts with the blood of a lamb, so the angel of death would pass over their homes. That night, a great cry echoed throughout Egypt, for there was not a house where someone was not dead. This final, devastating blow finally broke Pharaoh's will. Grief-stricken and defeated, he summoned Moses and told him to take his people and leave Egypt immediately. The Israelites, after centuries of bondage, were finally free. They gathered their families and their belongings and began their great exodus out of Egypt. But the story wasn't over. As soon as the Israelites were gone, Pharaoh's hardened heart returned. He regretted letting his entire workforce go. Consumed by rage and a thirst for revenge, he gathered his elite army, his chariots and horsemen, and pursued the fleeing Israelites, cornering them against the shores of the Red Sea. Trapped with the sea before them and Pharaoh's army behind them, the Israelites were terrified. It seemed they had escaped slavery only to be slaughtered. But Moses told them to stand firm and witness their salvation. He raised his staff, and God sent a strong wind that parted the waters of the Red Sea, creating a dry path right through the middle of the sea. The Israelites walked through on dry ground, with walls of water towering on their left and right. Pharaoh and his army, blinded by their arrogance, charged into the parted sea in pursuit. Once the last Israelite had reached the other side, Moses again raised his staff. The walls of water collapsed, and the Red Sea crashed down upon the entire Egyptian army. Pharaoh, his chariots, and his soldiers were all drowned. The tyrant who thought he was a god met his end at the bottom of the sea. The story of Pharaoh and Moses is more than just an ancient tale. It's a powerful lesson about tyranny and liberation, about faith and doubt, and about the ultimate triumph of good over evil. It teaches us that no matter how powerful an oppressor may seem, oppression cannot last forever. It shows that unwavering faith in a higher power can lead to salvation even in the most impossible circumstances. The fall of Pharaoh is an eternal reminder that arrogance leads to destruction, and that true power lies not in armies and crowns, but in justice and righteousness. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey back in time. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's most epic tales. Don't forget to ring the notification bell so you won't miss our next video. See you next time.